Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good morning and welcome to Keeneland Today for Sunday, October 15th here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz, alongside good friend and co-host Pete Visco. Thank you very much for joining us this morning as we are going to discuss the late pick 5 today, Sunday at Keeneland, plus a few other things. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Crush that like button. And Pete, there are a lot of things to like on this show from yesterday for sure. And also hit that notification bell so that you know when new content will arise. Of course, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Pete, you're the perfect person to talk about the power picks because today you are doing the Keeneland only power picks. I will selfishly talk about yesterday's power picks in just a minute.
Yes, our power picks, as we know, come out every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during the Keeneland Fall Meet, which there is only one weekend left. So there is one more Friday, one more Saturday, one more Sunday. And generally, we'll have Paul do Friday, Howard will do Saturday. And today, like Howard mentioned, I did Sunday, which I think went out already to any of our subscribers, so they have it in hand. So hopefully we can do as well today as Howard did yesterday, and Paul had some nice hits as well on Friday.
Yep, we got a great website I just showed. We're also on Instagram. We talked about that yesterday. We have regular power picks as well, obviously, that cover many tracks throughout the country. That is on Saturdays only. Pete, look, if we're not going to tout ourselves, who's going to do it for us? I talked about an aforementioned slump that I was in with pick fives. That was crushed yesterday. Crushed. The slump is gone. Had a nice early pick 5 yesterday for 4,400 plus consolations. And
Congrats.
If people watching, thank you very much. If people watching the show, watched the show yesterday morning, or especially received our Keeneland only power picks, 8 of the 10 races were won by top A choices, and actually 9, Pete, if you including the 4 horse who won the 4th race, who was an adjustment after we knew about scratches. The late pick 5 was very chalky, obviously. No one really made any money in late pick 5. But the early pick 5, Pete, no favorites at all. Not huge prices, but when you beat 3 to 5s, 4 to 5s, as we talked about in this show, you can really increase that value. Will that happen today in the late pick 5 with Caravel, who'll be very low? Pete, you and I will discuss that in just a few minutes.
Yes, we will. Yeah, congrats again. That was, and again, one thing we don't mention this enough, but the one thing with ABC grid is once the scratches hit, it can get a little confusing. And I actually added a note to today's power picks just to say you have, I'm going to use it this way. Say you have 2 A horses and 1 B horse on our grid, and one of your A horses scratches. What we would do in our real betting is move that B horse most likely up to an A. So if you're looking at our grids, consider that after you see the scratches, because unfortunately our power picks go out generally before the scratches come out, so we don't account for those. But it's not as black and white as you see on there, especially once the scratches hit. There's times when they could move up from a C to a B or a B to an A. And we just want people to know that and account for it, because we don't want people not to hit when we hit in our personal bets.
Yeah, I got mainly a ton of compliments. A few like, where was that in the power picks? Look, the 4 moved up. We actually talked about it on the show yesterday with Paul and Noah, who, by the way, had some real nice picks also, including Zippadoo to end the early pick 5 for me. But when we scratches come out, it changes. And Pete, we put out just the last thing before we go on to the handicapping. I put out a survey to many people on our email list about when they want the power picks. People don't want it after scratches. People have things to do. People are busy. They want the power picks earlier in the morning so they can look at it, which is part of the reason why we have this show, the Keeneland Today morning show, so that scratches do come out usually in the middle of our show and we can talk a little bit more detail. But we got a lot of great people in the comments. We got Battery Howard. I should have played early pick 5 yesterday. I didn't make it. But that was great handicapping. Thank you, Bedry. Really do appreciate that. Once in a while, I can find a winner. Steven Scott. This actually more than the pick 5. I think, Pete. I was more proud of this one, to be honest. My blood pressure is still through the roof from Command Performance almost getting there. Steven, I've been chasing this horse for 2 years. And Pete, if you remember, maybe you don't, Command Performance was actually a Kentucky Derby future bet for me after his really nice 2-year-old year where he ran a good 4th in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile against Corniche, but there was a scratch. It was actually my boy, no, not my boy Christopher. What the rail horse? I'm drawing a blank now, but anyway, that racing
Yeah.
changed. What was the name of that horse?
Was it?
Ah,
Was that the Jack Christopher year or no?
thank you, Jack Christopher. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, Command Performance had a big 2-year-old year. He was not very good last year, but he's improving and almost pulled it off at 35-1. And a good friend of the show, Matt Miller, Pete, really, really needed First Mission. I won't get into details, but I was happy either way, whether Command Performance won or lost. But
I
anyway.
mean, First Mission definitely took the brunt of the trip for the most part, and everyone else. And that was at least a nice athletic performance from First Mission. It wasn't the most dominating down the lane, but it was a nice athletic performance to sort of tip. But Command Performance was great. You should reach out. You should text PTF. I think he was in the same boat as you, touting that horse on the In the Money pods
really?
to no avail. If I remember, I mean, it was a long time ago. So if I remember correctly, you should ask him because I think he was one of those Command Performance early pre-derby bet kind of people back then. No, not yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if he had the same I don't know if I should call it stubbornness or stick-to-itiveness, one of the two, but
yeah,
I'm not sure if he followed it that. But it was a good call too, because that was one of those weird races where we talked about it over text, where there was just a lot of horses that underachieved in their career. Creative Minister, who also gave a nice run, is one that had so many people were excited about, and then sort of fizzled out a bit. So it was a weird race from that perspective.
If I recall, Pete, those weren't the exact words you used in our text chain.
I tend to use more colorful language in our yeah. That's why my family always says, I don't recognize you on the pod. You don't curse every other word like you do in real life.
Well, you could curse on here once in a while.
I try and be a nice family man I try and put on the family man front for the viewers.
David, Paul did not do great in the contest. I suppose I shouldn't make that public, but you asked. I don't think he's certainly won't be embarrassed by it. He's done pretty well in contests, but he needed the 6 in the one named filly in the Queen Elizabeth who rushed up and got a big second. He needed that girl to win to crush a big bet, and so Mauge ended up winning. Last thing, let's talk about the Queen Elizabeth, the QE2 a little bit, Pete. Mauge going to the Breeders' Cup. Would you go to the mile with her, or would you go to the filly and mare turf with her? Those are the two choices, looks like.
I mean, I think
Lindy
is the one, yes. And Lindy actually looked promising at one point in that race for sure. And then Mauge was pretty strong. I honestly think she fits in either one. I mean, I think the question was she okay with the distance yesterday? And she proved that. But I mean, she also did get a relatively comfortable lead, which, excuse me, if you go into the filly and mare turf where there may be an Italian, we're not sure where she's going. I don't know if she'll go to the mile or the filly and mare turf. There just might be more speed there. So again, I think she fits in either one. She's super talented. She was coming off a layoff and she ran her eyeballs out yesterday. So, and there was a couple disappointing horses though in that field too. So again, maybe we overvalue the field a bit yesterday. Pre-race, Sounds of Heaven was disappointing. The two whose name I am completely blanking on, Elusive. I knew it was Elusive something. She was right there.
Okay.
She was okay, but she also had the trip where she should have either gone by or been strong enough to hold for second, and didn't do either.
We talked about in the show. Maybe she just really appreciates a softer turf, and she didn't get that yesterday, and she definitely wouldn't get that at San Anita if she went. But it's gonna be interesting. Where in Italian and where Mauge goes, Pete, is gonna have a huge effect on not only the mile but the filly and mare turf. So we'll just have to see what happens, because they're both speed and in Italian's fast.
I mean, you don't get a lot of horses that are just that can make a case to be in either one and make a strong case where they'd be competitive. I mean, that's a pretty good position to be if you're their connections.
For sure. All right, Pete. Well, let's go on. Let's try to get some winners today here at Keeneland. It's going to be fast and firm. It's cooled down quite a bit in Kentucky as the front came through, as you well know, because you got some rain out there yesterday. I actually played Laurel yesterday. They actually escaped. The weather wasn't too bad, it looked like. They escaped, disastrous.
It rained most. I
rain
mean,
that.
I live 10 minutes from Laurel, and it rained most of the day, but it wasn't. It was a lot of sprinkling. It was a lot. There was some downpours, but it wasn't. No, it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I think we would have expected.
Yeah, it didn't look too bad.
Mm-mm.
Fun late pick 5 here, Pete, today at Keeneland, and we're going to discuss it right now. And again, if you subscribe to our Keeneland only power picks, you just received those about 40 minutes ago, which covers the entire card. We are not going to cover the early pick 5 today on this show. We're just going to talk about the late pick 5s. Let's get right to it. Let me take the banners off the screen.
One thing real quick, which is
Go
interesting,
ahead.
sorry, about this race, and I mentioned it in the power picks. This is like the linchpin race of the card because it ends the early pick 5, it starts the late pick 5, and it starts the $3 turf pick 3. So this is a race you really need to nail, and it's actually one of the more difficult, probably the most difficult race on the card, just in terms of depth and balance, as we'll get into. But this is a linchpin race, so I would say definitely handicap this one pretty strong if you're looking at it.
Not only that, Pete, according to your power picks, is one of your stronger opinions of the day. So let's get right to it.
Yeah.
Because I can think of no better person to follow my act yesterday than Pete Visco with his power picks today. So let's take a look at it right now, Pete. Race 5, it's difficult. It's a 5.5 furlong allowance race on the turf, and it's a big field. Again, when scratches come in, let's put us both on screen here. When scratches come in, if you can put it in the chat. It's hard for Pete and I to look at both because we're busy doing a show. But those of you in the chat, if you get scratches when they come up, which usually come up at around 11 a.m. Eastern, so just go in the next 15 minutes or so, please let us know. But let's go back to the field here. It's a field of 12. There's four AEs. 2 of them are main track only. Those horses are definitely not going to be in because it's going to be on the turf. The Moorline favorite here, and it's a very soft Moorline favorite, is the number 4. Heaven Street for Maker and Gaff Leone. Pete, you have a very strong opinion here. You're going to go with the 9, Mischievous. Is it mischievous? Or that's mischievous. Okay, I want to make sure that mischievous. I know. Is it everyone got pretty mischievous wrong too? Mischievous Rogue for Collins and Machado, who might very much appreciate what looks to be a very fast early pace in this one.
Well, and that was part of my thinking was when I looked at it, I think there were 4 horses. If you use time form as just sort of a gauge for the speed, there were 4 horses, as you could see one there, the 115. There were 4 horses with a 111 and up, all the way up to like a 123, I think might be the highest. So there's 4 horses that are very fast out of the gate. And a couple of them are to the outside, which means they're going to have to do a lot of work in order to sort of cut over in this big field, get to the lead, because most of the speed horses in this race need the lead types, which when you see a bunch of those, they just don't really have a lot of other options if they want to win this race. With the 9 here, Mischievous Rogue, this horse, I think if he, already misgendered, and I have no water to take my drink, but if he gets sort of the trip closer to the last couple or even the 1-3 back and just can sit behind what we hope is a really hot pace, I think just from a pace and trip perspective, I think this horse can get a jump on some of the other contenders who I think will be coming from a little further back. So if this horse can get the jump, overtake the speed, get to the lead, and then you got to hope that just the other closers just can't run them down. All right, here we go. Let's see.
So Michael Austin, thanks a lot. Just the AEs are out, so nothing there. Race 6. The AEs again, not much there. It looks like full fields. Race 7,
looks good.
No changes. Right, there's race 9, 2, 12, 13. Keep that in mind when we get to the last race.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Generally speaking, we're gonna have big fields today.
Yeah, I mean that was what was awesome and challenging about this sequence is the fields were really big. They were even. There weren't, aside from Caravel, there's not really big, huge favorites. There might be 2 on the whole card. But again, this will get back to Mischievous Rogue. I just think this horse was really coming on. And if you look basically from the December 16th race of 2022, from that race forward, you see that incremental nice buyer increases. So all that's showing is improvement. Then when they put the horse on the turf, a nice jump up from a buyer standpoint. Then comes off a little bit of a layoff, Kentucky Downs, which is always a weird track, and they stretched the horse out to 6.5. Runs sort of even, loses to the favorite in this race. But I didn't mind that race because it was 6.5. It was off a layoff. Now you're second off a layoff. You're cutting back to 5.5. 2 for 2 at this distance on the win end. Has the win, which was a lifetime buyer top at the time at Keeneland. I think there's just a lot to like about this horse, and you're getting a nice 6-1 price, which I think will hold because I don't think anybody's going to take much money in here. I don't know about your thoughts on from a price perspective how this race is going to shake out.
This is a tough race. I love this pick. I'm going to pull up Pete Visco, and I'm looking at my my legal pad. The 9 is my 4th A. It's just not on the screen as my top
Yeah.
3, but I think the 9 is interesting. I love this pick for you, Pete. I don't mind the outer post here a little bit because of all the speed, and sometimes I don't mind being outside because you get a clear run. And I don't know if the rails are out or not today. I should have looked at that actually. Actually, let's go back. It might matter slightly to me.
It is funny though because we have
the
top 4 top 4 A's exactly the same as well because I have the 2 is my 4th A that I had in my picks.
I am thinking the same way as you do with a closer here. I'm going with Evan Singh, who's a progressive 4-year-old who's been off for a little bit, but gets Flavian, has proven that he can close, has raced at Keeneland. And I just think this one's got more upside than some of the others, but this is a very tough race. He's probably going to launch from maybe a little further back, perhaps, than even your 9. But I like Evan Singh here. I think Evan Singh's got a big shot. We also...
We've chased that horse on the show before. I think we've actually hit that horse. I should say, not chased. I think we've hit that horse on the show before, you and I. So I think we like that.
Favorite there, the Colonel Power. We had him. Yeah.
Yeah.
We both like the 4 also, who's coming up in Kentucky Downs, which you said is a bit of a weird track. We've got the 2 in there. There's a lot of Biz Buzz. Don't overlook this horse. This is an improving 4-year-old also, who gets an inner post and might be a little more tactical. There's a lot of ways to go in this race. And I also should mention, as I put us on screen, Julien Leparoux is riding the 2. It was just announced that Julien Leparoux is going to be riding full-time at Oaklawn coming up here in the winter and spring from agent Jose Santos Jr. Seems to just have every jockey, pretty much other than the, the Ortizes and Flavian, etc. So the 2 is not impossible either. Pete, the 2 also is an A?
I had the 2 as an A. Leparoux was sort of honestly one of the factors that dropped this horse down just because he hasn't been running well at Keeneland. Although Michael Trombetta just had Arzak win last week at this same configuration, basically here at Keeneland. So if you're looking for someone who's hot at a configuration and can get a horse home, hey, Trombetta showed he could do it last week.
Yep. Paul Conlon. Paul, how you doing, buddy? I had a chance to meet Paul, Pete, at Keeneland last week. Did I get any winner's circle photos at Keeneland? I did not, because Shards did not win. So I did not get any winner's circle photos there. But Paul, it's great to meet you, and good luck today at Keeneland. All right, let's go on to the next race. And race 5 is a complete cluster. It's wide open. There's a ton of speed. It's pretty much a stake race, Pete. I mean, it's a high class allowance. It could easily be a great.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, easy grade 3. Yep.
Let's go to race 6. Now this race is very difficult. Again, main special, 2-year-old fillies. They're going 7 furlongs. It's another big field of 12, and the also eligibles are not in. So just the main Bayou field. The morning line favorite is, is it 5-1? No, 9-2.
No, 9-2. Yeah.
Light it up, Louis. Anyone who's named Louis is going to be betting this horse, and this horse will not be 9-2. That filly is trained by Maker and Saez. Let me switch over the picks. Sorry about that. A little late with the banner switch. There we go. Oh, wow. Look at that, Pete. We are both going with Cox and Giroux, the first-time starter, Sweet Sunshine. Pete, what do you like about this firster?
Not as much as I would hope. This wasn't exactly one of my stronger opinions. The one thing I did like, I mean, it's a first timer. It is out of Godolphin. It's Cox and Giroux. It's a hard spun out of Elusive Quality. So all the on paper sort of from a breeding, from a pedigree standpoint, from a connection standpoint, they're all pretty solid. the one thing I like, the sire, so hard spun and emboldened, both won on debut. So again, you're just looking for any sort of hint that there might be some sort of precocity with a horse. Brad Cox, 5 for 12 first time starters in maiden special weight dirt sprints at Keeneland in the past year. So he's just been pretty hot. I mean, not a huge sample size. The one thing you look at his works, and I know this is something I think you pay attention to, so I'll be curious what you thought about it. Had a little gap in the works in September, so worked on September 8th, then didn't work again till September 30th. But what I didn't mind was came back in that September 30th, a nice 48, then came back on October 8th, another. So got the 2 consecutives in, and the second one wasn't very fast, but it was solid, 16 out of 100. So I looked at it there.
Full out of the dam in Bolden, you see on the screen. Bolden was a nice horse that Cox actually trained. It was pretty precocious.
Stakes. Yeah,
graded stakes and precocious. So that led me, that gave me more confidence. But the work
Me
tab
too.
is a little bit concerning. But again, it's Cox, Giroux, and Godolphin. It's hard for me to believe that they're going to, start a horse at Keeneland that's going to be short. But there's a lot of question marks in here, Pete. Again, let's put us on screen a second. We talked about this yesterday because yesterday was the same situation. Please don't think that you can't see the board to start your pick 5. If you're playing a pick 5, you can. We talked about this. Those probable will pay doubles. Take a look at them. They were pretty accurate yesterday. If you remember, the Wesley Ward horse was actually favored in the doubles. His first time start of the 5 didn't win, but was favored and did run well. And the second choice, the 7, who was my personal top choice, did win. And the 11, who took a little sneaky money, also ran very well. So does the board always, tell? Not necessarily. But at Keeneland, Saratoga, first time starters, I think it sort of does, Pete.
Well, especially when you have what do we have, 12 here, right? And you have a 9-2 is your favorite. So you're going to need any clue you can get, because obviously even Nick Tamaro doesn't really know how to gauge this race as the morning line maker, because I mean he's looking at it and every how many horses are within a point and a half of each other morning line, which you just know makes it wide open from the beginning.
7 furlongs, not easy to win on debut. That's a very tricky distance to win on debut, but we'll see what happens here. I also want to say hello to Jose Manuel Camacaro. Hola, Jose, ¿cómo estás? Estoy bien. He is from Venezuela. What's up, Jose? Thanks for joining the show. Looks like he's going to be betting Vicky Oliver and Bejarano. He likes that combination. Hard to go against that. Jose, good luck today. If anyone can speak some fluent Spanish, feel free to talk to Jose in the chat, although I'm assuming he also speaks English or has got that Spanish to English translator going on as well. I can speak some Spanish, but not fluently, not enough to make sense on this show. So, but I could say, me gusto caballos. I could say that, which means I like horses. All right, moving on. I also like the 12, Pete. Speaking of things I like, the 12 and 11 are coming out of the same race. It's a 6 furlong race at Kentucky Downs. I like the 12 a little more because the breeding. The 12 is by Palace Malice out of a Spicetown mare, and Calistoga. Maybe you remember this horse, Pete, from way back. Was a nice horse for Mott and was mainly dirt. So I'm very interested in the 12. I'm not sure why. Again, this one started. Oh, there's the Vicky Oliver Bejarano I just noticed. So Jose, you and I are thinking alike a little bit. I forgot about the connections there. Was 30 to 1 morning line or 31. I don't like that, but I think this horse is meant for dirt, has works over the dirt. I'm just guessing here, Pete. I mean,
well, and tried to close into a really slow pace. Yeah. The 12 tried to close. I've gotten to the point where I worry less and less about the odds on a horse in their first start and even sometimes their finish if I think there's some reasons that they can bounce back. And so I've gotten to where, because you see so many now, especially when it's not like the super top ones, where sometimes it's just the first race. They're young, they don't know what the heck they're doing, they don't run well, and then whatever talent you see on paper maybe sometimes shows up in that second and third race out. So I've gotten a little more lenient with that. Okay, the 4 there, which we've have some mentions of in the chat that people like.
Christopher Rigothi thought the 4 is interesting. You have this one third, and Pete, just to show you how crazy are my opinions in this race. I don't usually do this very often. I'm going to show everyone my legal pad. People are like, what are you looking at, Howard? This is my little notes just for today. I do more notes, but take a look at what I have in race 6, which is a race that I don't know if you guys can see that. I have nothing And if you look, it says board at the top, meaning see what the board is. So I have no real opinions of this race until I see the board. It's rare that you'd see a bunch of blanks for me on the ABC line, but I don't know, Pete. I got to see what the board looks like. The 4 is an interesting horse coming from Colonial.
Yeah, it's funny though. My note wasn't all that reassuring for horse who I have in third. I just had tried to close into not much pace or basically no pace in both races, and we'll need more pace here. But it's one of those where there's so many first time starters or first time horses or second time horses that you don't really know what the pace is going to look like, and that's the problem when you have firsters. It's also hard not just to gauge their talent, but to gauge how they're going to run and how the race shape is going to go. Just because we don't. I mean, you could look at works and say, oh, okay, that 2 looks fast. I'm just making that up. But you could say, oh, the 2 looks fast based on works. But who the hell knows? It's their first time out of a gate in a real race. They don't break well. And then the whole pace situation goes to crap.
Yeah, this is going to be difficult. My overall opinion, and I could be completely wrong in about a few hours from now, I wasn't huge fans of the firsters in this race. And P and I look at these horses very carefully, guys. We don't just like throw out stuff willy nilly. We look at the breeding. We look at the workouts. It's still a guessing game. Some of these horses look like they want to go longer. Some
the 2,
look like they might be better on.
You had the 2 up. Yep. Yeah, the 2 to me felt long.
Turf. Yeah. I have a ton of questions with the firsters, so I'm going to be using the horses that are being bet the most in the doubles as my A's, which is not stinking thinking at all to me. I think that's actually smart betting. If there's a sneaky one that I like as a firster, maybe I'll throw in. I have a feeling that one of the outside horses, the 11 or 12, is going to run big here. And there's nothing wrong with experience, Pete. Experience matters a lot, probably even more going 7 than 5.5 or 6, I would say also.
No, I agree with that 100%. Actually, we always like to see if we can have something negative against the favorite. I had one sort of negative stat against the 11, who again is only 9-2, so it's not like you're beating a 6-5 shot. Mike Maker, 1 for 31 on the win end with second-time starters going turf to dirt in the past 3 years. So for whatever reason, not his bag to go turf to dirt after the first race was on turf. So again, if you're looking for, I mean, generally, I think if you would see Maker, Saez, nice breeding there. It looks like breeding is pretty strong for the dirt. So if that horse takes money, maybe that's something that could ease you off a bit.
That sort of turned me off. I looked at Maker's stats, and I mean, it's not his jam, so to speak. No. So I was a little bit against him. I mean, I have him third. Her.
What were those?
I can't remember. I have that horse third.
Her, yes.
Yeah, I have her third. Hold on a second.
I don't have my drink, so I apologize if my voice gets scratchy while we talk. I forgot my water this morning.
That's all right. Let's go on to the next race. This is the big one. This is the big one of the day. It's the Franklin Stakes. This sort of started Caravel's run last year, and she's back here again. It's a grade 3. It's for the girls, sprinting 5.5 on the turf. The rail is out 20 feet, Pete, so I was wrong about the rail not being out, because if it's out here, it's going to be out in race 5. I'm 99% positive. So speed might play a little bit better today. That's something to keep in mind, which would sort of hurt our choices a bit maybe in race 5. But keep tabs on that, because when the rails come out, that does tend to help speed a little bit. Speaking of the rail, Caravel on the inside, Moorline favorite 9-5. You got live odds now, which doesn't really mean much because we got 2 hours of the first post. But Caravel's 8-5 right now, is definitely going to be the favorite in this race. Not the only speedy horse in here, because you got Twilight Gleaming, you got some others. Pete, let's go to our picks here. Race 7. We're not messing around. I mean, sometimes we've talked about we want to beat. I've been very good at beating chalk lately. This one, I'm just and I saw you in the. I think you put it in the chat or you text me. I can't remember. You've tried to beat Caravel. It's on your power picks.
It's on the power picks.
Caravel a few times, as have I. I was correct in beating her last time at Saratoga, but we need to talk about that race, and we'll show it. That was a complete, utter. It was boggerific, to put it into Tom Durkin terminology. It was just. It was not only was it soft, it was really soft. And I think it's pretty fair to say that Caravel clearly did not handle that turf last time in Saratoga.
No, and that's a given. And I think people knew that going in. I know myself, I actually had Cogburn on top that day.
Yes,
so
that was a great call.
Yeah, I was sort of And again, though, Caravel is a horse who I'm not a fan of for whatever, some horses you like, some horses you don't. I've never been a fan of this horse. Always try and beat her. She always screws you because she just wins almost, she wins constantly. And in that race, it was one of the few times where it was correct, but it took basically a terrible boggy turf course to do it. And the one thing it did have was whether it was the turf or not, it had No Balls, who whatever you want to call it, nobles or no balls, who was a pretty prominent and quality speed horse to get out front of and have to chase down, which Cogburn did. But Caravel has shown she could do that on a faster course. So even though there is a little bit of other speed in here, she could sit off as well. So you assume that that's just a scratch off and you toss that race and you move on, especially at Keeneland. So go ahead. You want to make a point?
Well, look at this final time. Now, if you pay attention to Saratoga or times in general, that final time in the race was 103 and 3. Pete, we've seen 5.5 furlong turf race at Saratoga. I think the track record's like a minute and like 4/5, but often the run of like 101 is not unusual. This was like a full 2.5 seconds. We're talking about like a fair like 10 lengths slower than if it was on firm. So I mean, you could see the amount of clod they were kicking up there. Yeah, I mean, Caravel's class alone, got her a third actually, or fourth. Sorry, I mean she didn't exactly completely pack it in. Here's my main concern, and I'm going to be weighing heavily on this horse, as will a lot of people. This 9-5 is a total pipe dream. This horse can be 4-5.
Yeah.
The rail, man. If she was anywhere else but the rail, Pete, I love her. See First Mission in the dictionary yesterday, who had to get out of a real tight spot and barely win the last race, although he wasn't nearly as good as he had been in the past because the layoff, blah, blah, blah. Fine. But when you're down on the rail, it can be tricky, and you would assume she's just going to break out of there and go to the lead. But there are others with speed. If she sort of has to like rate inside behind horses that just go crazy, or for example, some horses really decide to push her and she's like in a 2-3-way speed duel, I would just much prefer that she's outside. That's my only concern in this race for Caravel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at this race and think she can't lose. I just look at it and say, again, we talk about this a lot, where this is one of those races where if she does lose, it could be a lot. I have 5 horses in the B spot underneath Caravel right now. So I look at it and go, so you're either singling or you're, and I'm talking more of like a caveman. So ABC, obviously you could spread out a bit, but I wouldn't like, she's not just like a lone A and not play anyone else to me in this race. But I just think if not her, it could be many. So it's hard to pinpoint who you would use. Like, hey, I'm going to use 2 horses on my A line. Nah, she makes the most sense. She's classiest. Her figures are better. And if she gets on the top, which she can do from the one hole, she can just take the field around. And she's 3 for 3 here. She won the Breeders' Cup here. She won this race last year, obviously here, since we're here again. Mm-hmm. So everything points to her as being the obvious choice, but not unbeatable, in my opinion.
I'm assuming the layoff was planned, and this is a prep for the Breeders' Cup in a few weeks. So I'm not really concerned about the layoff at all. No. You got to figure Twilight Gleaming is going, Pete, for Wesley Ward. I mean, he's not going to rate this filly. She is fast, and she's capable of big efforts like April 15th when Paul and I were there for the Grade 1 Gamble. We saw that race live in person. She was awesome. That was a track record, actually. That day, I believe, or I think it was actually a stakes record, not a track record.
Yeah, it was something.
The 4 is going. I agree with you. Bay Storm would be the one that I'd like underneath, or to possibly upset the field. She looks like the best quality closer, but let's face it, she's going to need a bunch of things to happen to beat Caravel from the rail.
And I mean, she's going to have to. Yeah, Caravel's going to have to not run her A race because basically Bay Storm doesn't have a race on the form, and it's not like she's some new horse. She doesn't have a race on the form that could beat Caravel at her best, but she's super talented. Again, she could be sitting off if things do heat up. And one thing, Jonathan Thomas, 43% wins, 70% in the money in turf sprints over the past like 15 months. So he's just been on fire, and this horse has had a lot to do with that. But I like this horse. I think it's just, it's tough running down Caravel. I mean, in the end, that's what it is. She doesn't get run down very often, especially if she can get the lead.
Pete, our Latin American friends are out in full force. Good
Unbelievable.
smart, Desiree Avila Chacon. Hola, how you doing? Good morning, Howard. Welcome from Venezuela. Going with the trifecta in race 7. King the 2 there, it looks like.
Yeah,
In this is race 7, right? Okay,
it
going
is.
Wakanaka. I like it as a little bit of a price. Wakanaka over 178 over 178. Good luck. Brixmar says. Listen, everyone there in Latin America, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right hand side of the screen, and also hit that notification bell as well. Pete, say that in Spanish now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna offend our Latin American listeners by trying
No.
to speak Spanish. So I
All right,
never even took
subscribe,
Spanish in
por
school. I
favor.
never even took it in high school. So I took
All right.
Italian. So I don't
There
need.
you go.
I
Shock!
have no
Wow, that's
Spanish for
breaking
anyone.
news. That's
Yes.
shocking. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move on, Pete. There's others you can use. This is Caravel's race to lose, you would think, and I'm guessing if she runs well, she's going to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and she would definitely be a factor there. I actually
Oh
think
yeah.
she'd be better going 5 than 5.5 or 6. So she'll be a
Probably.
major
Yeah. Yeah.
player there if she goes there. You would think,
Oh,
right?
I think the 7-star guest I see in the chat is actually scratched. Is what I'm seeing.
Oh,
So
actually, we should have. Well, no reason to bring up the 7 now, I suppose. But the 7 was an Appleby. I'm assuming this one came over with. Uh, he didn't have Mouge, did he? No.
no, he
Who did
had
he come over
somebody though, didn't he? Yesterday.
with? I'd like to
Why am
think
I?
so. I'm drawing a blank,
Yeah, it
but
doesn't
let's
matter.
see if
But
I
yeah.
refresh. Let's see if the horse is if I refresh in real time here. Okay, there you
Oh,
go.
there we go.
7
Yep.
is out. So
Okay.
anyway, we no reason to talk about the 7. All right, let's move on then. Pete, let me take off the banner here. We're going to go to race 8, and I'm going to go banner, banner, banner. Boom. Okay, we are a little bit different here. What's interesting about our picks at the bottom, Pete, is our own top choices. Neither one of us have in second or third. So
Yeah.
this is interesting. Allowance race 6.5 furlongs on the dirt of 3-year-olds and up. This is an N1X, or actually, sorry, an N2X. Excuse me. These are colts. Did I say girls? I don't think I did. These are for the
No.
boys. Field of 8. Moorline favorite is the number 3. Bourbon Bash for D. Wayne for the coach, who I will say was quite disappointing with Seize the Gray yesterday. I was completely wrong about that horse. But anyway, he's got Bourbon Bash, Lucas, and Rosario, and we're both going to try to beat this horse. You're going with You Ain't Poppin' for Brendan Walsh and Santana from the rail.
Yeah, I liked, and again, this was another race where I could probably make a case for, I think I had 5 horses in consideration at one point. So I could make a case for a bunch. This one, again, only one race in the books, but did win and did chase sort of a slow pace. Actually, was pretty close to it at one point. Was able to pass horses, which you like to see from a first-time starter. Was able to pass horses, get the win. Talking about a $200,000 purchase, so not necessarily chicken feed. I think there is some speed in here. So if the one can work out a similar trip, the speed will go. The one can sort of sit right off and hopefully work out a trip. And if you get a little bit more speed up front, then maybe it makes it even a little easier to close into it. And then Brendan Walsh, 6 for 8, 7 for 8, 6 for 8 wins, 7 for 8 in the money. Second time starters who won their maiden race in allowance and has won actually the last 4 times that's happened. So Brendan Walsh on fire under these circumstances. So in a race where I think there's a ton of ways to go, I'm just going to land on the one.
We've got some interesting things in the chat. This is from, I might have trouble with the pronunciation here. Paul Halloran.
Oh, I don't. Yeah,
it's a Halloran.
That
Oh,
doesn't.
it's our buddy.
I was going to say
Paul
that doesn't
Halloran.
sound like somebody we should really be listening to. So I don't know.
Now let's just ignore that. No, we'll bring it back, Paul. Twilight Gleaming got a poor ride at Del Mar. Dangerous back at Keeneland. Yeah, that ride was not pretty out at Del Mar. And Paul also mentioned Appleby had a winner at Belmont yesterday as well. And Siggy Mendoza, there we go, our Latin American friends, our amigos. Estradigias y más, which means predictions and more, strategies and more, excuse me, from Siggy. He likes Wakanaka in the previous race.
Yep.
Doesn't like Caravel at all from the rail. I get it. We will see. Paul, you made Paul angry, Pete.
Never. Well, we're Italian. We get angry at everything. That's
We
what
do.
we do. You know,
He'll
what
be
are we going to
okay.
do? Yeah.
I've got the one as a B. In fact, I have 4 Bs in this race, Pete. I really like the 6 a lot in this race. If I were doing power picks, the 6 would be one of my plays. And here's the reason: it's 6.5 furlongs. The 1 can obviously win, no doubt. The 2's got speed. The 3 I'm against only because I'm not sure about the quicker turnaround, and I don't think she has to win. And she, you know, she has one very slow work since, which is not like Dwayne. The 4 is very live to me, ran huge, but has a lot of speed, and the 5's got a lot of speed. I think Pensacola, the number 6, this is for Brissett and Pratt, owned by Windstar, went 7 and 6.5 at Ellis. So I think this distance is going to be great. Toss out the last race. I don't know what this horse was doing on turf, which is silly. Same in the Command Performance yesterday, Pete, was turf to dirt. And
Yep.
these non-turf efforts really usually raises your price because, unfortunately, there are people that look at that last line only. They're like, what's that? Go back to the races, the 2 back and 3 back, clearly good enough to win, has been working well. And to me, Pete, most importantly, Pratt's going to stalk all that inside speed. And on paper, at least, figures to get a great trip. Is he going to be good enough? I don't know. But he cost $600,000. This was very well meant. I don't know if I'm getting 7-2, but I really like the number 6 Pensacola here quite a bit. I would use all the others. In general, I'm against Bourbon Bash, although Bourbon Bash can win, and I'm using him.
Yep, I agree. And actually, when I look at the 6, and I even look at my notes, I don't really have a logical reason that I didn't have this horse in the top 3. So I'm sort of with you on all your points. I don't think there's really a negative there, and I like the pickup of Pratt. Obviously, I had this horse, so I had like 2 A's, 2 B's. If you look at my grid on the power picks, so I'm with you. I think this horse has as good a shot as any, and I am also against Bourbon Bash. So I think there's a few horses you can use to beat that one, and you hope that Bourbon Bash takes the money and loses, like we're sort of thinking, at least as our logic goes.
Exactly. Michael Austin likes the 9, by the way, in the last race. Little slant to Nick Tamro, doesn't like the morning line. Won't be 20-1. That last race was the stake race that we were talking about. I agree with Christopher, by the way, at the bottom of the screen. Will be 5-2. I think that's about right, Christopher. That's fine. I'd be happy with 5-2. I like Pensacola quite a bit. Have you ever been to Pensacola, Pete?
I have not. Now that I'm trying to think of it, I've been to Florida a bunch, but I don't remember being in Pensacola. But who knows?
I believe they have not an air base. They have I know there's a military base there in Pensacola. So anyway, all right, let me go ahead and go to the last race, Pete, as we're going to end the show here. This last race is 1.5 miles on the turf, and we are both going with the same horse in this case. We're both going with the 1 here. Yep. We're going to go with the 1. I know this is a strong opinion of yours on the power picks as well. Let me go ahead and bring it up on the screen. It's 1.5 miles on the turf. It is a field allowance race, big field of 12. Now, there were scratches. Was it 2-11-12? Let me refresh. I think that, if I remember that correctly. Oh boy. I'm not a robot. Okay. They didn't like that. I think it was 2-11-12 for the scratches.
Which stings, because those are my, those are my
2-12-13. Good. I'm so glad the Pletcher is in, because I got things to say about Mally Moo. All right, 2-12-13. So it's a field of math. 10. Field of 10. Morning favorite is the rail horse. Yeah, the number 1. R. Callie, Kim, Walsh, Gaffleone. We're both going with this 6-year-old mare to close out what should be a great day at Keeneland today, Sunday.
Yeah, and again, I thought this was on paper a pretty uneven race, a little bit wide open. What I did like about this horse is, if you look 3 back, the last run of 2022 was in July, then is off basically for a year. But if you looked at this horse, was running pretty well in 2022, and actually towards the end of 2021 was turning it around. Was running okay in 2022. I don't know exactly what happened, but obviously something, since the horse was gone for a year, but comes back at 6 years old and is better. And 2 straight wins, lifetime buyer, top back-to-back races. But again, you say 6-year-old, but she's only run 11 times. So she's not like a 6-year-old who's just an old war veteran who's just been running and running and running, and maybe at 6 is a little sort of just tired and can't handle it anymore. This one still seems to be on the improve, and in a race where I think we know who a lot of the other horses are, if I can get one that's improving, here we go, more Spanish for you to butcher. If we can get more that's in, if we get another
I
one,
can read Spanish just fine. I just can't always say it correctly.
but fine
Uno
might be a
de
strong
los
word.
retardados y ahí le dejo mi regalo de buen dividendo en la 5.
Well,
There you
you're
go.
saying you're reading
I
it
don't
well, but
recall what that.
I don't know if you're reading it well, so I'm not going to give you any credit
It's
one way or
okay.
the
It's not bad. I mean, I'm a little rusty. Give me a break. Anyway, the one,
other.
yeah, the one is, I don't love horses that have won 2 in a row, like they're going to win 3 in a row. But
Yeah, why not?
why not? I mean, she seems very, very logical here. Is going to get the rail. Is going to get a good trip. I don't really have a reason to go against the one per se. But we both have the 11, and we got to talk about this horse a little bit.
Wait,
Pete,
real quick
because-
on the one. The one thing I did like too, because she is going the 1.5 for the first time,
Okay.
but she's a half to Temple City Terror, who was a graded stakes winner, going 12 on turf, and was also trained by Brendan Walsh. So I sort of just like the symmetry there. I mentioned that in the power picks as well. So I like that. That I think that's maybe at least a clue that she might be okay stretching all the way out to 12 furlongs. But go ahead to the 11, because I'm with you on the 11 as well.
So Michael Austin is suggesting that he had some connection with the 11. Maybe Michael wants to be more specific. He said, since we sold Malibu, as in he was part owner of this horse, she will decline. I don't know if that's wishful thinking or just that's what he honestly thinks will happen. I don't know. 11 is very interesting. Malibu is a horse, if you recall, Pete, way back earlier, I touted this horse after her win at Dundalk. And this race here in the wait a while, I actually had it on the power picks and loved her. And she had trouble and she ran huge against Juniper Marshmallow, was 8-1 that day. And then I chased her a little bit after that and she really tailed off. She ran a nice race in the Pen Oaks. Now Pletcher takes over and actually had a race already for Pletcher at Kentucky Downs. These English channels just might appreciate the distance. If I recall, Pete, she's a little bit of a smaller filly. Maybe Michael Austin can comment in the chat. I don't know if her build suggests that she wants to go longer, but I like Pletcher's trying something different. There's not a lot of early speed in here, and you would think the English channels can handle distance. So speaking of English channels, Channel Maker retired, by the way. What a great career he had. This is a bit of a flyer. I don't love the post. I'm just more interested to see what Malibu does. I don't know how much I'm going to be using her in my pick 5 right now. I have her as a B as in boy. But I don't know. I'm very interested to see what Malibu does in this spot.
I mean, you see, I have her in second as well, so I'm sort of with you, and I do like the last race with Pratt was, ran fourth, but fourth by 3/4 and had a tough, was way in the back, closed well, going 1.125 miles. So that was actually her longest race. So it did show that she could make up ground. She could close well. She also had Lasix in that one. So I thought that was a pretty good race on Lasix, gets Lasix back again. I'm with you. I think I'm just curious about how she's going to run. There's a little bit of class relief here. Pletcher, surprisingly, because you don't think of him, 3 for 10 wins, 7 for 10 in the money, 12 furlongs and up on an allowance races on the turf. So at this level, it's just not something you think of him as, hey, that's not necessarily his strength, although he does well in the Belmont Stakes. So maybe we should think of him more like that. But
Michael Austin says the Pen Oaks was the last race we had before she was sold. Okay, to LSU stables. That's the same stables as Farbridge, by the way. Farbridge owns LSU stable. So
now I like her even more now that she's not under the hands of Mike Austin. Now I like her even more. I think that moves her forward.
Hey, Michael, I think I'll see you in a few weeks at Santa Anita. Comment in the chat. I believe he's from California, so I'm sure he's going to be at the Breeders' Cup. I'd love to meet you out there, Michael. We'll have to talk through DMs or email or whatever. There are other horses in this race. Some people, there's a lot of long shots in here. Some suggested the 7, Sand and Sea. for Raylu. And, Raylu's probably going to put this horse on the lead.
Yep.
And went first time on the lead last time and actually ran very well against the 1, Pete. So, I mean, she barely lost the 1 last time. Why can't she beat the 1 this time? I'm using the 7 defensively. There's not a lot of speed in the race. Good American, I wasn't sure what to do with. I didn't know if that last race was just a perfect trip aberration because the inside was really good that weekend and it was Kentucky Downs. But she does have back class and maybe she's getting better and should give her like another month off. So to me, this race is mainly 1-6. I'm more curious about the 11. We'll have to see.
Yeah, this is I'm with you. The 6 was one I looked at. The 7, I like who do you have in third? You have you do have the 6. I had the 4, Sabalenka, who's a horse I've always sort of liked, but usually leaves too much to do. She usually leaves herself just a little bit too much to do, and I didn't think there was enough speed in here, so I thought but she is getting some class relief. She's run against really high quality horses. But again, if you're a closer, you're a closer, and sometimes you just get stuck. There you go.
You know the reference there, Pete?
Yeah, I love. She's like in my top 3 favorite tennis players, and so I love Sabalenka. Yeah.
Okay, Michael Austin, I will see you at Sandy in a few weeks. Awesome. Oh, he's there. He's there right now. Okay, say hi to the San Gabriel Mountains for me, Michael, because I miss those things. And I look forward to seeing those babies in a few weeks. Michael wants me to talk about the 9. All right, Michael, we'll talk about the 9. Hold on a second. Pete, I'll let you do it. Amani's Image 21 for motion. I'm guessing Michael likes the 9 a little bit. Is there anything to like about the 9 other than
I had, it's funny. One? I had the 9 as sort of a C on my original. I don't think it made the grid just for budgetary purposes, but I had this horse as a C. I just thought the form, I mean, if you're looking, again, if you toss the last race when you're doing something maybe you don't like, lost by 21, which is wild, but it was off the turf.
Yeah,
and it was a speed favoring track and was sort of off the pace, and a 4-horse field was sitting in 4th on a speed favoring track. So you could toss that one completely. Once got in the motion barn, this horse just sort of turned it around and got back on the turf, was in, actually is improved. You see from a buyer standpoint, again, 3 back was a lifetime buyer top. 2 back almost hit that again, and that was on a yielding turf, but it was going 1.25 miles. So you figure the distance may not be an issue. At 20-1, you're getting Johnny V back up again. It's out of a Tappet. It's out of Tappet himself. So you figure added distance should be okay. Yeah, I thought this horse was definitely in the mix. Might be, probably has to move forward a little bit on the win end, but at 20-1, I think definitely for a board horse for sure.
Pete, I want to make a correction, and this correction comes from Michelle Yu, who, when I was first doing the show and talking more about breeding than I normally did, I misspoke. Can't be out of Tappet because Tappet's a boy. And I was wondering, that's where it came from, literally out of.
Yeah.
So by Tappet, out of a Morning Raider mare, Amani. So anyway,
I don't care about
boys for obvious science reasons. Let's just say.
Well, anyway. Something came out of the boy to get the whole process started. So theoretically, you can. So tell Michelle Yu she needs to work. She needs to take it a step back to before the baby actually came out. So that's my argument. So I'm going to stick with
Jackson? He's probably learning about that kind of stuff in school. 6th grade.
He did.
Right?
He took sex ed in 5th grade, so he's all ready. He's ready to go. Yeah, he's ready to roll.
Well, ready to go.
Mentally, yes, mentally.
Let's
hopefully not. Yeah,
Jackson,
he's only 12, so let's relax.
As long as possible, Pete.
I don't need any grandchildren while he's in middle school. Let's relax on that.
He's into that.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, this show has gone completely. People are tuning in like, what the hell? Sex education. I thought this was Keeneland today.
We cover all topics on this show. We're as equally. Right. Yes.
Let's go. Actually, I'm so used to going to the Pick 5 ticket. We don't do Pick 5.
No Pick 5s. No.
So, but in general, again, as we close the show here, single Caravel.
I mean, single, but I wouldn't mind a few back. Yeah, I wouldn't mind some backup tickets for sure. I think, though, again, we mentioned it, single in the sense of, I don't know if I'd have a strong enough opinion to pick who else I would put on that A line, and you don't want to go too deep. There you go, Katie. She appreciates our stupid humor.
For sure. Yeah, you single the 1, you have some backup tickets. I mean, I'm going to put her, what % chance do you think she is to win? If you were to put a percentage on it. We're going to do a little math to end the show. Teach the people some things.
I would say she is probably 40%, 45%.
40, but okay, we'll say
45,
45.
let's say.
We'll say 45. If she's 45, hold on a second, my bad. That would put her somewhere in the range of 6 to 5.
Which I think is fair. And I was even going to say higher, but it's still a big field. And
yes, I again, if she didn't have the rail, I would like her a lot more. We'll end the show. Stephen Grutner,
thank
great
you,
show,
Steven.
gentlemen. Stephen, thank you. Pete, we got people from literally all over the world watching our shows in the morning. Thanks, especially those Latin American viewers. And again, folks, if you really, really want to help the show, other than watching and listening, and of course, subscribing to our Power Picks, we have Keeneland Power Picks. Pete, if they want to buy the Keeneland Power Picks for next weekend, the last weekend, and they haven't done any Power Picks so far, what do they need to do if they want to buy next weekend's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday cards at Keeneland for the HHH Power Picks?
So just go to our website. On the top, on the homepage, there's a little banner that says to whatever the language is to get our Keeneland Power Picks. Click here, or you just go to the Power Picks page. We put them up on Mondays. So Monday morning, next week's, you'll be able to subscribe to next week's. Again, it's, I think, $15 for the 3 days. So super cheap. It's PayPal only. All you have to do, it takes 2 seconds. All you have to do is click on the PayPal and we'll get notified that you want to purchase it. But again, they usually come up, usually when I get to work in the morning, I put them, I take a quick minute to put them up, and then, it's in the basement. This is my work. This is my office. So it only takes a minute, but yes, they'll be up tomorrow. So if you're interested in next weekend's, that's where you find them.
There we go. Nice hoodie, by the way. We might, speaking of your hoodie,
oh yes,
we might, and I'm trying to get through the Breeders' Cup stuff first, but right after the Breeders' Cup, I'm going to make a phone call. We might open up the HHH Racing Podcast merch store again. I'll get back to everyone on that. Pete, we've got a lot of things happening in the next few weeks. Please check your emails if you're on our email list. If you are not on our email list, I highly recommend you do so. We don't send out an email like every day. We're not going to bother you. Look, it's coming up in the video player right now with my email. It's there it is, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Just email me if you'd like to be on our email list. Most of the people on our email list have showed interest earlier in our podcast, or have emailed me, or have been a part of our Power Picks. One other thing, Pete, I want to mention. This is the first time I've mentioned it today, or I actually mentioned it a long time. I haven't mentioned it to anyone on our co-host either. We will be bringing back our fun plays on Breeders' Cup collaboratively for the show. We're going to play a group pick six. We're going to play a group pick six on Breeders' Cup weekend. We also might play some other bets. So you'll get information on that if you want to be part of our group syndicate 2-day pick six for the Breeders' Cup. We had success with that last year. We had success playing the Superfecta and the Derby, if you recall, Pete.
Yep.
So look for information in our emails about our syndicate group pick six that you might want to buy into. Because as always, Pete, the Breeders' Cup is very difficult, and the pick six even more so.
Well, and this year, I think this year we don't have as many quote unquote superstars out there. So I think some of these races are going to be ripe for prices. So a pick six like that, especially the 2-dayer, man, that could pay balloons. So hopefully we're in the middle of that somehow.
Speaking of balloons, you want to give 2 thumbs up? Will we get balloons?
I don't know. Let's see. Did we get anything today? It's very random. It's usually when me and Paul are on. So obviously it's more of a me. Like, I think it just gets more excited that they see, that Mac can see Paul's face. Maybe I don't know what
maybe
it is.
Maybe they're Italian balloons.
There you go. Look at this. It doesn't do anything. We had fireworks yesterday, or when was that? Thursday? Yeah. We had fireworks that popped up out of nowhere. But I don't.
Maybe it's the beginning of the show. It seems to happen early in the show.
Maybe it just gets tired by the end, and it's sick of listening to us talk, so it doesn't want to. The fireworks don't go as much.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get some fireworks today at Keeneland. Pete with the late pick 5. Thank you very much for joining us on Keeneland today. For my co-host Pete Visco, this has been Howard Kravitz of the HHH Racing Podcast. We'll see you next week, Wednesday, Betting and Boozin', Thursday, Flagship Show, and lots more to come in the coming weeks as we approach the Breeders' Cup at beautiful Santa Anita in Arcadia, California. But for today, crush your bets at Keeneland. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.